Hey everyone, this is Adam with psychedelicinvest.com. I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. In today's episode, it's going to be a kind of special episode. So there's been a lot of breaking news around Mindmed over the last couple months, and specifically this week, and also like a couple weeks before with the whole Freeman stuff. But today, it's kind of getting to a head. We're getting more information. And I wanted to cover this for you guys because I feel like some people are not understanding the full scope of this. So I'm going to basically be reading the court documents from the Reddit post here that Control Plus Z, my very good friend, I appreciate you. You are a gem. Has posted here, and then credit was to AnyCare9269 who broke this overnight. So I just want to make sure everyone gets the proper credit here. So yeah, I'm going to be digging into this, giving my thoughts, and just hopefully just providing clarity for people who might be confused in regards to what's going on. So before I get started, guys, I do have coronavirus right now, so my voice is not at optimal nasal levels. I think it's got a little bit more of like a I'm an 80-year-old grandma who's been smoking cigarettes for 70 years vibe. So please bear with me. And I apologize. Hopefully, I'll be better by next week, and also the content will resume coming in as it usually has been. The flow of content has been going to be coming in that way. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you very much. And without further ado, I'm going to get into this. All right, and now to jump right into things, I'm just going to be reading right off this post, and then once again, giving my thoughts. I will be adding my thoughts in as I read this. So let's get going. All right. So this case involves the fraudulent schemes of defendant Stephen Hurst and Sunray Asset Management Incorporated, together in service of Hearst conspiracy and criminal enterprise with the drug development companies that Hearst controls, as well as with defendant Kerry Turnbull and the drug development company that Turnbull controls, Ceruvia. So Ceruvia Life Sciences. Remember this name; it's very important, and it's going to come up a bunch in the court documents, and like it's significant. So with Turnbull's assistance and plaintiffs money and equity, Hearst has wielded that control to enrich himself at plaintiff's expense and at the cost of valuable intellectual property. While the details of how Hearst carried out these schemes are necessarily complex, he followed a pattern. Hearst took advantage of unsuspecting business partners' trust to gain control over companies. He compartmentalized information so only he and his trusted circle had access to key information, and then he engaged in self-dealing. So the allegations here are pretty damn significant and damning if they can be proven true. So right off the bat here, this is not great at all. This is actually pretty terrible. So if this is what is actually going on and we can take these claims for face value, this is just not okay at all. All right, so let's continue. In just one example, Hearst negotiated a preliminary agreement for development of a savant drug with the notorious fraudster Martin Shkreli. In a September 2016 article on meeting with Shkreli to discuss the deal, Hearst is quoted as having high regard for how Shkreli does business. So, like, I'm going to withhold my opinion in regards to this specifically because at the end of the day, we don't know what they spoke about. We don't know the nature of what it was. Martin Shkreli is basically a garbage person in regards to the biotech sector in general. But if you look at it also from, like, some people do appreciate Martin Shkreli for his cutthroat views on making money at the expense of others. I don't agree with that at all. I think he's a garbage person. And he also had a recent thing with his crypto. He had a whole new crypto Ponzi scheme going on. Not a Ponzi scheme. He had this. I think he rug pulled on his crypto investors. I'm not sure exactly what ended up going on with that, but the guy is essentially a fraud. And it's unfortunate that it's not a good look for somebody who's involved with a company like Mindmed to be in touch with Martin Shkreli. But we don't know the details of that, so we'll see if more comes of this. But they mentioned this here. All right, next. The three founders decided to focus on the development of pharmaceutical drugs with psychoactive components to treat mental health conditions, including anxiety, addiction, attention deficit, and hyperactivity disorder, the resulting company known as Savant. So you guys are very familiar with Savant. I interviewed Scott Freeman, the former chief medical officer of Savant. Please check out that interview if you guys want more information on his affiliation with Savant and Mindmed. But basically, Savant is the company that Mindmed turned into. So what do we have next? Hurst used his position as chairman and CEO of both Savant and later its publicly traded spin-off company, Mind Medicine, there you go, to commingle assets and personnel with Ceruvia through a series of coordinated transactions between Hearst and Turnbull. The apparent goal of the scheme was for Hurst to use his position as chairman/CEO to force Mind Medicine, a publicly traded company, to buy Ceruvia. To make Ceruvia valuable to Mind Medicine, Hurst and Turnbull siphoned off Savant/Mindmed assets to Ceruvia. What follows below is how the schemes were perpetrated. So once again, now the bombs are starting to drop. This is not okay at all. This is actually pretty bad. But once again, we need to hear from Mindmed to basically get the full scope of the story. But this is one side of the story right now, and it's just, this is already looking like a disaster. So essentially leveraging Mindmed to Hurst was leveraging Mindmed to profit for himself, which is incredibly, you're screwing over investors, you're screwing over Mindmed. This is not okay. At the heart of Hurst's schemes was his abuse of his corporate form as background. It is therefore necessary to outline Savant's structure and the transaction ultimately entered into related to the molecule known as 18-MC. All right, so that you could take that for face value. Once again, guys, I'm really, really sick right now, so I'm even having trouble seeing these words. So I do apologize if I'm like stuttering or if I have to repeat words at any point and my voice is destroyed. But yeah, I'm very sick right now. So next, Savant was largely unsuccessful in its initial attempts to raise capital to pursue the potential benefits of drugs with psychoactive components. The business's only significant investment, a $6.7 million grant from the National Institute of Health, was secured by Freeman in October 12th. Okay. I don't have anything to say about that. Savant's fortunes began to change in 2019, as discussed more fully below, based on the efforts of Ferdinand Belga, an outside consultant who was brought into Savant as chief business officer to attract investments. Investors became interested in working with Savant. A plan was subsequently developed with two of these investors, Leonard Lachman and Jimon Rahn. So J.R. Rahn, guys, we know who he is. Okay. So Jimon Rahn is J.R. Rahn. To form a new Delaware corporation that would continue the AT&C program and subsequently would be listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange as Mind Medicine. So now we're kind of getting the idea of how J.R. Rahn came into the picture and how Mind Medicine kind of came about from Savant. Next, Hearst executed the Mindmed agreements on behalf of Savant Addiction and Savant Inc., and in doing so represented that he had full authority to act. Okay, we could take that for face value. Nothing needs to be elaborated there. However, the representation was false. As noted, Savant Holdings is the managing member of Savant Addiction, and Hearst as Savant Holdings managing member, and Raymond Joseph Tessie and R. Lee Douglas as board members were required to abide by their obligations under the Savant Holdings operating agreement. Pursuant to the terms of the operating agreement, Hearst was required to obtain authorization from a majority in interest of Savant Holdings members prior to authorizing the Mindmed transaction. Hearst did not. So now we're already starting to see how Hearst was starting to manipulate things. This is, once again, not a good look at all, and it seems like Hearst is the villain in this story based on this account. I would want to, before we give the full, before I give my full perspective on this, I need to hear from Mindmed's camp and see what the hell's going on. In connection with the Mindmed agreements, investors Leonard Lachman and Jimon Rahn received 35 million Mindmed shares upon the company's formation. Hearst and Turnbull established Ceruvia, a competitor for the identical or similar drugs, but which became a shadow company to Mindmed Savant. So once again, remember Ceruvia. As part of Hearst's scheme, he then used the 55 million Mindmed shares of Savant to appoint himself as CEO and chairman of Mindmed, and then proceed to commingle Mindmed assets and personnel and manufacturing with Ceruvia. So now this is where things are going to start to get dicey. So what he's doing here is not great at all, and if anything, I feel, from what I'm understanding here, this is super, super corrupt. But let's continue reading because it gets better. Ultimately, the pattern repeated itself with Mindmed. As described below, Hurst misrepresentations to investors, including Latchman and Rahn, and the Mindmed board of directors were exposed, and Hurst was removed from the Mindmed board. So he ended up getting removed from the Mindmed board. But the question is, was the damage done already? Because from what I understand here, the damage was already done. On March 31st, 2019, Rand sent Freeman the following email, emblematic of how Hearst's bullying attempt to manipulate the structure of the transaction was creating problems. I'm going to read the email for you guys now. After 1 month of discussions with Steve Hurst, I am not the least bit inspired to put money into the opportunity. In fact, he has done more to convince me why I should not invest or partner with you, V. Why I should, very strange. However, I do see a new vision for the company, and I do see the potential for a very large exit. So that's why I'm still here writing this email. So a very large exit. So interesting use of words there. To be 100% transparent, I would have walked away had you and I not had the conversation last week. I feel we speak the same language. I have a planned vision for the company for an RTO. It entails us raising $1 to $3 million initially in a reverse merger transaction, and then $15 to $20 million based on some positive news flow to take it through to phase 2. The art of raising money is not Steve's strength. Let me figure it out so the company has the tools to survive and get to an exit. Riding out grant money ain't the way to get liquidity. There's a difference between exit/sale and finding partial liquidity for all parties. Sometimes people confuse the two. Steve is. Guys, this is wild. So this was the email that J.R. Rand sent to Freeman. And once again, he's talking about planning his exit, they're just basically talking on pumping and dumping on the company. So let's continue here. Let me go back to that. They're talking about pumping and dumping on the company, guys. This is horrible. This is horrible. And I'm happy that this came out because now you guys are getting insight into how corrupt some of these backdoor deals in regards to biotech companies, just publicly traded companies in general, can be. It's disgusting, to say the least. So around June 2019, at the time of the Mindmed transaction, Savant and Freeman entered an accord and satisfaction of the outstanding debt that Savant owed to Freeman, including the Savant addiction notes and warrants and $205,000 loaned to Savant Holdings, plus accrued interest, whereby Savant agreed to transfer Mindmed shares to Freeman. Okay? Remember that. Initially, the parties agreed to 4.5 million Mindmed shares to resolve the Savant addiction note for $450,000, but later amended that agreement to 5 million shares to also reflect the resolution of warrants and the $205,000 founder loan plus accrued interest. So, further, although most of the Mindmed shares in Savant Holdings were finally distributed in June 2022 after Hearst had held the shares through 2 Mindmed annual shareholder meetings. 139 over here. Of course, there was another delay tactic. Instead of releasing the Mindmed shares to Savant members as agreed, Hearst retained control over the Mindmed shares and the power to vote for them as long as he could. Dude, Hearst is being like portrayed here as a very corrupt, disgusting individual. And what we're seeing unfold here as I'm reading this is, once again, it's disgusting. It's gross. And the people who end up suffering here are the retail shareholders. All right, so now we have Hearst diverts BOL-148 to Ceruvia. As with the other schemes, the BOL-148 gambit described below was based on Hearst's control over Savant and his ability to withhold information from and bully Savant members. Hearst used his powers to divert the opportunity to develop BOL-148 to another company for his personal gain. BOL-148 has immense therapeutic value because it is a derivative of LSD that does not cause hallucination. Dr. Andrew Sewell conducted a study of patients with cluster headaches and found that LSD and Silbine are better than standard drugs at treating cluster headaches. Sewell ALS studied BOL-148 and found it was effective in cluster headaches and filed a patent. In other words, cluster headaches could be treated by an LSD congener that did not have hallucinogenic side effects. So once again, guys, I never pronounce words correctly, so just live with it. I apologize. But to get back to that, so basically BOL-148 showed some extremely significant upside. It is what looks to be analog of LSD. and the indication they were using it for was cluster headaches. And it's been known within the psychedelic communities that psychedelics are effective for cluster headaches, cluster migraines. In response, Hearst revealed that Savant had not paid the drug's $50,000 license fee, and the license now belonged to defendant Turnbull, a Savant addiction medicine member, and his company Ceruvia Life Sciences. What the hell? So the plot thickens now. Hurst told Latchman, Rahn, and Freeman that the Savant projects like BOL-148 and Ceruvia projects on psilocybin for alcoholism would be coming to Mindmed under Savant's collaboration with Ceruvia. In other words, he repeated the false claim that he had previously made to Freeman. So basically, the claim was that for example, psilocybin, BOL-148, these projects that were going on under Hearst and Ceruvia would be transferred to Mindmed. That was the claim. That was what was promised. But is that the reality? Let's read on. Hurst failed to relent, but he doubled down on surreptitiously assisting Ceruvia at the expense of Mindmed. Hurst misled Mindmed investors, Rahn and Latchman, about the quality of 18MC. So this has been a conversation now within the psychedelic community for the last couple months. Like 18MC, why did they drop the project? Is there something actually there? And I know that there were many people who were saying that there wasn't anything to be looked at in regards to 18MC. So this could be proving them correct. Thus, the culmination of Hearst's enterprise was to loot Savant and Mindmed's BOL-148 and LSD intellectual property and give it to Ceruvia. So basically, he cherry-picked the drug with the most potential and basically to give it to Ceruvia. So they didn't see anything with 18MC, but BOL-148 is what he wanted, and that's what he was going to get. Hearst was going to get for Ceruvia, a company in which he and Turnbull could continue to exercise control over after his ouster from Mindmed. The ultimate prize on the screen was gaining control of Mindmed's intellectual property, since Hearst, as a patent attorney, understood that Mindmed's drug, LSD, and BOL-148 would become very valuable. And as Mindmed spent hundreds of millions of dollars for clinical drug development, they would eventually have to buy back their intellectual property rights or acquire Ceruvia. Wow. So basically, this stuff was promised to Mindmed, but he was retaining it in the background all along. There was never any intention to give it to Mindmed. And the goal was to basically just keep hemorrhaging money out of Mindmed. And to what end? To what end? So basically, these things were promised to Mindmed. They were never given to Mindmed. And he was hoping, I guess the goal was that they would eventually have to buy back their intellectual property rights or acquire Ceruvia. This is so dirty, guys. This is so dirty. Despite the conflict of interest, Hearst reached an agreement in principle with Turnbull to acquire 50 grams of pharmaceutical-grade LSD. Turnbull, who was using the same manufacturer, Onyx, was going to start manufacturing Rahn on or about November 16, 2019. Although Hearst had claimed Ceruvia wasn't interested in LSD, in fact, that was a lie. In exchange, Mindmed would pay $300,000 to Ceruvia, agreed not to manufacture BOL-148 or compete with Ceruvia on the development of BOL-148 for regulatory approval. And 3, agree not to assert any future LSD patent intellectual property rights against Ceruvia, such that Ceruvia's rights to manufacture or sell LSD would remain unchanged. The one-sided transaction was a catastrophe for Mindmed because it gave a competitor, Ceruvia, the perpetual right to manufacture, develop, and sell BOL-148 and LSD. This is horrible. In August 2021, Freeman, for the first time, found the proof on Ceruvia's website that Ceruvia is a shadow company to Mindmed, developing the same drugs, psilocybin, LSD, BOL-148. And sharing 5 employees. Hurst/Turnbull owned the IP rights for LSD. So even once Mindmed spent hundreds of millions of dollars to obtain FDA approval for LSD, Hurst/Turnbull can either sell LSD through Ceruvia or sell Mindmed back its intellectual property rights, which could then be worth close to $1 billion. This is crazy. So essentially at the end here, I'm going to read what was added here. In the interview, Barrow touted the blockbuster potential of BOL-148, a non-hallucinogenic version of LSD and a drug that Savant Mindmed had given its IP rights to Ceruvia. So essentially, they've been talking this up. Meanwhile, they didn't even have the rights to this drug. Ceruvia own the rights to this drug. So what do we make of all this? Guys, this is not looking good at all. I want to hear from Mindmed's camps, but this is looking like, it looks like it looks like lawsuits are going to be coming out of this. They're already happening. And I wouldn't be surprised if I see some lawsuits on behalf of investors as well. If this ends up all being true. But the reality is, guys, things like this don't just pop out of nowhere. If a company is doing things like the right way and ethically, this stuff isn't coming out. This stuff isn't coming out because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So the fact that this came out, whether it's like, you can think it might be this conspiracy against Mindmed, but I really don't think it's that. I think that there has been some very shady things going on with Mindmed from basically every form of management that they had, from Savant to Mindmed now, from J.R. Rahn to Barrow now. This is really, really, really disheartening, and this could end up being a stain on the psychedelic sector and the psychedelic community in general. This is really, really disgusting, and I hope everyone who takes a part of this gets karma back. But the reality is, most likely they won't, because these people have the money to basically come out with just some fines and being relatively okay, while you guys, the retail investors, are going to end up losing your pants. And that's usually how things shake out. So this really, really hurts to go over. And I am incredibly, I'm sorry to Mindmed investors if things really, really start to turn downhill from here. Like I said, we'll see what happens. The company just reverse split, and this is coming out now. A lot of this stuff seems very coordinated in some capacity. So once again, we're going to see how this plays out. But this is just not great at all. And yeah, that is the episode for today. Feel free to drop any questions in the comments. As I'm feeling better, I'm going to really release more videos about this next week. I appreciate you guys for supporting me. Thank you so much. My name is Adam Tubero. You can find me on Instagram and Reddit. My name is Waxing Eloquence, WAXINGELOQUENCE. And you can email me at thegreatwavewithin@gmail.com. THEGREATWITHIN. Wait, I missed a word there. The Great Wave Within. THEGREATWAVEWITHIN @gmail.com. Reach out to me if you are attached to this story in any capacity and you have anything to say. If you're even legally allowed to say anything, please reach out to me. I want to basically publicize this as much as possible, because at the end of the day, the investors need to know what they're getting themselves into. And this is a channel for retail investors, or at least the episodes that I cover and what I put out is directly for retail investors, and I'm here to support you guys. So I'd love for people to bring some more information to me. I'm going to be seeking it out as well, and I'm going to be picking this up on Monday. Have a great weekend, guys. This is Adam with psychedelicinvest.com.